Tigers on Sports 56. Here is your host, the voice of the Tigers, Dave Wolo.
Look up on the wall. There on the wall. Under the door. Behind the door. There's a crack in the mirror. Somewhere there's a hole in the way. I tell you they not to play. Tell me, do you think not to play?
Welcome in on this beautiful Tuesday morning. Nice to see sunshine and great weather. It's only going to get better. ESPN has put out some percentages. You're going to like this, I know. They have put out percentages of teams that are going to be undefeated this year. And I must confess, I like it. Memphis is at like 7.4% by the ESPN power ranking. And Ole Miss is slightly ahead of them. Texas has the highest percentage to be undefeated. So there is a lot of respect for the Tigers nationally now. And if they were to go undefeated, they would make the playoff, I think. Although NIU still has the most signature win of the group of five. Speaking of which, Tim Pernetti is in town. He was on with Greg and Eli this morning. He does, and I'm all for this, for the American, he proposes there would be a floor for this league, that you've got to spend so much money to still be a member of the league. I don't know what that number is. The proof, as always, is in the details. So until we really see what these numbers are all about, what's that floor? We got to wait to see the ceiling, and the federal judge is going to figure out what that ceiling is going to be. Is it going to be 22%? Of the gross revenue? Is that what they'll be allowed to pay players? By the way, the University of Tennessee coming up with this new revenue stream of adding 10% to the tickets as a talent fee if the judge says you can directly pay players. That's genius. It's genius not just because you're finding a way to feed your collective with more money. It doesn't even need to be collective anymore, right? You can pay the players directly with this new deal if the judge passes it. But the key to that is you've just found a new way, a new revenue stream to pay the players. And that's what's going to be essential in the long run. You can't just rob Peter to pay Paul because you got a new expense at the expense of something else. This is an additional revenue stream that would then go directly to the players. I would bet if this all works that would become a model for many, if not all, schools. So pretty big tip of the cap to them for coming up with all of this. There are, so many opinions about should Memphis, if the invite comes, jump to the new PAC deal, or should they stay in the AAC hoping for the ACC or the Big 12 to come by and say, we want you? Now, look, we're being honest. You'd much rather be in the Big 12 or the ACC to whatever this new deal is. But you've been passed over by these guys so many times. And I've said this all along. One in the hand is worth two in the bush. If you get an offer, and the numbers are right, so we can speculate all we want. The truth of the matter is you have to wait and see what the details are. There's a $10 million, 27-month exit deal to leave the American. So far, the four schools that left the Mountain West, their exit fee, that was paid by the new PAC deal. Would they do that for all schools? Got to see that. That's $10 million. Memphis and the AAC through, I think it's 31. They have a great TV deal for a group of 5. They get paid $8 to $10 million. So wouldn't you, in your own mind, think, because that deal's not going to be as good after 31, I'll tell you that right now. That was signed with other teams in the league. Mike Oresco did a great job with that. Tim Pernetti, he might end up being a fabulous commissioner. I have no idea, but I doubt he will get in whatever the new dollars worth will be in 31 or 32. I sincerely doubt he's going to match that value in those current dollars to what these schools are getting now with what is left in the American. But that's still a long way away. I get it. But you got to think ahead, right? So at this point, in today's dollars, wouldn't you have to get a deal that pays $8 to $10 million, whatever that new rights deal is, and you're hoping it's ESPN and those family of stations because they have the best distribution. You get seen. But it would have to be the $8 to $10 million, wouldn't it? Plus, say 2 to 3 extra, because that's the amount of money that you're going to have to pay extra to travel in this new league. So I think you got to have a $10 to $15 million deal in order to make that work. But in my mind, there is no doubt already the nucleus of this deal with those schools is better just by schools and competition. It's better than what's in the American right now. And if there are a couple of the better American schools, Tulane, South Florida, if they leave, well, that makes the American even worse, but it does enhance what you will see in this new PAC deal. And, they're also, and this could just be sheer flirting and speculation and throwing stuff out, but if they were to say, okay, we're going to bring in Gonzaga and Wichita State basketball only, now you got a heck of a basketball league. It's already a good basketball league. A lot of those schools made the NCAA tournament. San Diego State went to the Final Four 2 years ago. I think San Diego State and Boise State both made the NCAA last year.
Yeah, they did.
You're talking about a better league, a much better league in both sports. So it's all, the proof will be in the details. And until we see those, that's what you got to go with, in my opinion. You just stand pat and you look and you think about it. But once you see the numbers, you got to make your move. Because you do have a 27-month window that you got to give the American. And frankly, $10 million is not outrageous. Especially if they don't pay it, they should pay some of it. You work out a deal that way and figure it all out. I like the setup of the PAC better than I like the American and the future of the American. But again, you don't make a move until you see what the details are. Then we'll make a move. But I don't know if anybody's going to argue that the way the PAC thing is going, it's just a better league than the makeup of the American, especially if you look at the future, because, if you lose some schools, that waters it down even more. I'm sitting in the Family Leisure Studio. We're going to hear from the Big Cheese, the head honcho of the AutoZone Liberty Bowl. That would be Steve Earhart. He comes your way in a second. We've got Jeff Moore, and we've got Mike Keith. We talk NFL. We talk Titans in particular. This is amazing to me. 12 of the 16 NFL games went down to the wire. They were one-score games. They were within a touchdown. And the road record this week, crazy. The road record in the NFL, 10-6. How does that happen? What happened to home field advantages? Absolutely nuts. Mentioned I'm sitting in the Family Leisure Studio where, again, I will remind you, cash in while you can because I don't know how much longer it will last. That big, huge spa sale where you can get a brand new spa, if it's in stock, for $28.99. It's under $3,000 by a long shot. How about cold plunges under $4,000? The Cadillacs, the swim spas, they're big. 4 people can get in there. You can move around, and they're so good to rejuvenate yourself. $17,499. Just get there. Get to I-40 and Wooden Road. See what I'm talking about at Family Leisure. Let's bring in the big cheese, the head honcho of the AutoZone Liberty Bowl. That is Steve Earhart. I don't know if you've had a chance. Have you talked with the commissioner of the American who's in town visiting? Tim Pernetti is here. He was on earlier this morning with Greg and Eli. What's your sense of his visit? Good morning.
Good morning, David. I'm glad to be here with you. No, I have not talked to him, Tim Pernetti. I've known him for a long time when he was back at Rutgers and so on. And so I'm sure he's here, in the middle of all the brouhaha around the country about the revival of the Pack half a dozen. So that'd be my guess. I don't know. Did he say anything definitive this morning?
No, he just said everybody should stay together, basically, and that he's going to try to establish a floor, a number of what you would invest in order to stay in the league to be competitive. Of course, the ceiling will be determined by a federal judge who's going to okay or not okay, and she's already not okayed, guidelines for revenue sharing. So we'll have to wait and see on that. Whatever those would be the ceiling, and that would be up to the individual schools to try to commit to that to get the best of the athletes. But I just said, and I'd love your sense of it. You've been in the college athletic business, for a long time. I don't even want to say how long.
It is a long time, Dave. But no, my thoughts are, and I've read the columns, Jeff Calkins and Buckley and that kind of thing, and there's no question that there's a swirl going around, and with Florida State and Clemson still with their lawsuits, and the people getting ready for. Here's the big key, Dave. And I think you and I have talked about this, that everybody's contracts run out. This is this year and next year, and then in 26, there's new CFP decisions to be made. There's new conference decisions. There's new bowl decisions to be made, and so everybody's jockeying right now. In fact, we're positioning the AutoZone Liberty Bowl to be very competitive when those negotiations start next spring. They'll actually start next spring, which includes sponsors, television, so on. And here's my comment about what it's always about the Benjamins. It's always about the money.
Yeah.
And and people talk about, well, should they join the Pack half dozen? And do they have a better chance of getting a better TV contract than they would here in the AAC? Or is there some other configuration that would happen if the AAC or the ACC breaks up? But here's the key. I would suggest that they should be very careful and make sure that the money is on the line before they move. Nobody can tell me that Washington and Oregon did not know how much money they were going to get when they jumped into the Big Ten. And the same thing's true, whether even SMU, when they jumped in the AC, they're not getting very much. In fact, they had to spend a lot of money. In fact, there's some people that talk about, well, did SMU make a good decision or a bad decision? And I think certainly if the University of Memphis ends up in the CFP this year, which I think they've got an opportunity to do that, and they're playing one of the 12 top teams, they're going to say, well, Memphis made the right decision. Is SMU going to be ever contender for the championship of the Atlantic Coast Conference to get into the CFP? So are they better to just hold fire? Now, one thing I would suggest, and I've talked about it for a couple of years, you want to be relevant in the future. And one thing I think that's going to help be relevant is if the American, I keep saying AC, would bring in Air Force, because then you've got the 3 military academies, all powerful, entities. They got legislators by the dozens. They're backing them up, and it will be hard to push down and cut out the American Athletic Conference if you have Army, Navy, and Air Force, all the service academies in the league. Now, one thing I think they made a mistake years ago. You can't blame Pernetti, but when they brought Army into the league, and Army and Navy were able to say, well, we're going to keep the Army-Navy money in that game separate from the league contract. But
I don't think it's a league game. Let's examine that for a second. if you bring in Air Force, what are you really bringing in? I don't get that, especially with the way the deal is now. The Army-Navy game is nothing in the conference. It actually takes place the week after the conference championship game. So,
well, I'm suggesting that they somehow leverage Army, Navy, and Air Force into bringing all their games inside the league. Don't bring the reason I'm suggesting that there could be a win is to have, when you get ready in the future, to say, okay, who's going to get a shot at the CFP? Who's going to be a G5 versus who's going to be a P5? If you've got all three service academies who's got all their senators and Congress people saying, wait a minute, you can't cut these guys out and push them down to a lower level. I mean, the historic games, and they've got all that government involvement. So I think it helps the American stay ahead of what would be a reconstituted Pac-12.
Well,
so that's where I think it's political more than anything.
I would say to you, and again, I'm with you. It's the Benjamins. It's the proof in the details. Who's paying the buyout if you do go? But if you look, and how much money do you get in? I'm telling you, we know it's $8 to $10 million. And just to clarify, the Americans' TV contract doesn't end until 31. This is the fifth year of a 12-year deal. And I give Mike Oresco a lot of credit. He got the best Group of 5 TV deal with ESPN than anybody has. It's much better than the Mountain Wests. So you got to look at what the details of a new deal would be, plus the added expense of travel. So you probably are looking at a $12 to $15 million deal in $1931 if you're going to make that move. But
There's
just
no
can't
deal.
tell me that the Pac grouping at this moment, which will add to schools, isn't already a much more competitive, in both sports, better league than the configuration of the American right now. But you don't move until you have the details of what your financial deal is going to be.
Right. I'm on your team about the money, because the Pac-12, if the University of Memphis would want to consider it, they've got to have a hell of a lot more money coming from a sure deal than to walk away now. That's my point, because right now I can assure you there is no deal on the table for the Pac-12, Pac-6, Pac-8, whatever you want to call them. Now, if they get a deal on the table, and when people say, "Well, you got to sign up first, then we go get the deal," that's fool's gold. I mean,
right.
I hope the university does not jump in. You're 100% right when we say make damn sure there's money on the table that far exceeds what you're getting now, because obviously all the travel costs and that kind of thing, are going to be much greater, than they are right now. So, yeah, if the money is assured and on the table, it's something to think about for sure. But right now, it's all, well, if you'll come join us, then maybe we can go get a TV deal. And I don't know, you and your guest Joe Dank talk a lot about TV. Last weekend on Saturday, there were, 35 national telecasts of college football games, something like that. Where's the room for anybody to put on a game of, say, what would be the new Pac-6 or Pac-8, what do we say, to get any significant money? And all the good TV spots where you can get the big money are sucked up. Unfortunately, that's the truth between the SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, and so on. The Pac-12 had one little spot there where they had that late at night window, and that's what they were getting their amount of money from. But I don't think it's out there right now. And so, again, please ask Joe what he thinks there, and that they can get that in place. The TV people will tell you, if you do this, then we'll give you that. That's exactly what they did with the Big Ten when they said, okay, if you bring in these West Coast teams, we get the Los Angeles market with UCLA and USC, and here's how much money you're going to get. And that's why they moved, because the money was on the table. So let's not be too ready to jump at a deal. Well, if you do this, then we'll get that. So that's to say the cautionary tale.
I agree with that. I don't agree with Air Force coming in as being a save-all for this conference, because I've yet to see, except for I love going to Navy. I would love going to Army, but I don't get what they really bring to you in terms of programming or competitiveness. I just don't.
No, it's just, and I'm not trying to argue. We are on the say. I think it's political juice down the road when you have the three national government supported, and those three entities have enough clout in Congress to pressure the big guys. When I say the big guys, the SEC and the Big Ten, to say, let's make sure that this conference has access to the playoffs without crushing them like they're in the process of doing right now to a lot of schools.
Now, you have in your game what we all know is a great deal with the SEC versus the Big 12. But we also know that 5 of the top 6 teams in the AP poll this week are SEC schools. Let's just say 5, because I can't imagine they'd get 6, but it sure looks like they would get 5 of the 12 spots into the playoffs. What does that do for representation by that league, which, if we're being honest, you've gotten the raw end of the deal, or I should say Memphis as a city has gotten the raw end of the deal of them sending teams to the AutoZone Liberty Bowl when it comes down to the end. Are you going to be sweating this year? Do you think you'll end up with an SEC team in your game?
Well, we've certainly looked at all the permutations there and the predictions there, and the good thing is that they have 2 more teams, both with Texas and Oklahoma. So there's at least 2 more teams in the, quote, pool for the SEC pool. So even if they get, as you say, I'm predicting they'll get 4 out of the 12. But if it's 5 out of the 12, that would be cutting out, either the ACC or the Big 12 for more than one team. Or Notre Dame falls out as well. But I believe that if they're 4 up or even 5 up, there'll be enough teams to go around. It depends on, who goes on. What last night, Hunter Yurachek talked a lot about it. He thought Arkansas would play very, very well at Auburn. That's a big game to see which one of those teams could get to their 6 wins. So I think we're going to be fine because of the extra 2 teams in the pool of teams available for the AutoZone Liberty Bowl this year.
That being because of the addition of Texas and Oklahoma. Yeah,
that's correct. Yeah,
right.
So that and again, if Texas that right now they're certainly in a catbird seat, but they haven't been through the gauntlet of the SEC yet. And some of those teams is Missouri really that good? I mean, they had to come from behind to beat Boston College at home, and so are they really rated up there? And so we'll see what comes to pass here. But yes, we'll have an SEC versus a Big 12 matchup this year on December 27th.
Yeah, I know you'll get a Big 12 rep. I'm not convinced on the SEC. We will wait.
Well,
and see
then
that
was the great opportunity we had to help the University of Memphis program by inviting University of Memphis last year, and they're certainly flying high, and their win against Iowa State gave them great credibility and a great opportunity. And Ryan Silverfield and his team are doing a great job there. They've done a good job recruiting in the portal and being very competitive. So, that was a good thing for them. And right now that Iowa State's 3-0, just beat Iowa on the road, and that even gives more credibility to the University of Memphis argument of what a good team that the University of Memphis really is.
You just look at it. The last 4 games, both offensive, defense have been productive, and they are 2-0 against Power 4 and 4-0 total. It's exciting times. On to Navy this week, and we do love going to that stadium with all the wars and everything on the facades. It's very cool. We're out of time, my friend. As always, we appreciate it. Thank you so much. We will talk next week.
Thank you, David.
See you in Annapolis. That is Steve Earhart, Big Cheese head honcho of the AutoZone Liberty Bowl. We take a break. When we come back, Jeff Moore on the National Football League. Man, there's so many big storylines this week. We get to them in just a moment.
Be sure to follow us at Sports56 WHBQ on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube to watch live video of our shows, stay up to date with station events, and have chances to win prizes. Don't miss out on anything that's going on. Follow us at Sports56 WHBQ.
So you need to sell your house? I have the solution. Call 901-406-1101. That's 901-406-1101. Call my buddy Bill and I buy houses, any house, any area, as is. It's literally as simple as that. Just pick up your phone, call 901-406-1101. That's 901-406-1101. Call my buddy Bill and I buy houses. Guaranteed to close in 5 days. If you need to sell your house fast, smooth and every sip as easy as the last. Tito's handmade vodka tastes just as good with tap water as it does your favorite mixers. Back in the day, Tito distilled, hand-bottled, taste-tested, sent out to a few friends, then taste-tested again to give you the finest juice around. No frills, no flavors, no fancy labels, just the good stuff, just Tito's. For recipes, videos, and more, visit Tito'sVodka.com. Distilled and bottled in Austin, Texas. 40% alcohol by volume, mainly 80 proof, crafted to be savored responsibly. Hungry for that delicious smash burger flavor? Dyer's Cafe is the original smash burger since 1912 and still smashing burgers in Collier's historic town square. Come out for their lunch specials Monday through Friday 11 to 2. Ask about their world-famous split dog and authentic Chicago or New York dog. Try the leaner side of Dyer's with a grilled chicken sandwich or freshly made salad. Also serving lakes, Delta-raised catfish, Pasquale's tamales, and a customer favorite hand-breaded onion rings. Dyer's, serving world-famous burgers, dogs, and shakes in Collier's historic town square.
Let's talk some NFL with our former Ram and former Vol. That would be Jeff Moore. He's brought to you by Ken Garland. Ken Garland Custom Home Builders. You want to see some beautiful palaces that have been built over the last 70-plus years, third generation now, go to kengarland.com. You'll see exactly what I mean. Beautiful places, beautiful, beautiful buildings, all the latest amenities. If you've got an older building and you don't want to leave, but you want all the new modern, wonderful items like video rooms and speakers in the walls and California closets and those islands in the kitchen, you don't have those, he can renovate your home, and all of a sudden it's a modern palace where you've always lived. You'll love that. If you need land, he's got land that he can provide for you for that dream house. If you're not sure how to utilize land you've had maybe in your family for a long time, you want that modern, beautiful dream house, he can do that for you. He can do anything. And the job is never done with him, because if you've got a problem, you just call. He's always going to be there for you. Ken Garland, Custom Home Builders. Good morning, Jeff Moore. I got to tell you, This week was crazy in the NFL, how competitive it was. 12 of the 16 games were within a touchdown, one score. 5 were within a field goal. The road record this week, I don't know how this happens. What happened to home field advantage? The road teams won 10 of the 16 games.
It reminds me of the old adage, on any given Sunday. Because you had a lot of teams that just surprised us. I mean, the New Orleans Saints, to me, is one of the biggest stories of the season. You know, Derek Carr, I've always liked as a quarterback, but it just shows the difference when a quarterback gets an offensive coordinator that gets him. And with the weapons that they have, I mean, they scored on touchdowns on their first 6 possessions against the Cowboys in Jerryland. I mean, that just doesn't happen.
No.
So, you know, kudos to the Saints and what they're doing down there. The Minnesota Vikings upset the 49ers, and Sam Darnold is just playing phenomenal after being in Carolina, of all places.
I know.
And, of course, with the 49ers being on the bench and being able to learn there, he's playing fantastic. And Baker Mayfield goes to Detroit. You know, Tampa loses to them in the playoffs. They come back and they win a big game for them. And so they're off to a great start. And then, you know, this week coming up, there'll be surprises again, I think. But I did not expect some of the things that we saw this weekend, particularly the Ravens losing to the Raiders the way they did. I mean, it was just great football. And even a game last night. I mean,
oh my gosh, the game! I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm not sure I've seen a team blow a game as badly as this one does. In case you didn't know, Philly's got this game in hand. The Eagles have the ball. I think it's at like the 8-yard line. They got to get to the 5. It's 3rd down and 2 or 3. All they got to do, Atlanta's got no timeouts. All they got to do is really, even if they don't get the first down, they can use up a whole bunch of clock, get it under a minute to go in the game, kick a field goal, be up 6, right? Or if they get a first down, they're kneeling. It's over.
Yeah.
And Jalen Hurts rolls out. I think he could have run for the first down, to be honest with you. But he sees Saquon Barkley wide open, throws him the ball. All Barkley's got to do, bring it in, go down, game's over, we're kneeling.
Yeah.
He dropped the ball.
Yeah.
And so they had to kick the field goal, but now they had a minute 34, and in less than a minute, they drove down the field, and Atlanta wins the game. They stole one from Philly. And, you know, there's a difference between 0-2 and 1-1, and the biggest difference in that is if you just look at history, only 2 teams in the current format, only 2 teams who started off 0-2 in the NFL have ever made the playoffs.
Yeah, it's tough. There are a lot of fingers to be pointed at the Eagles last night. I mean, I certainly Saquon Barkley has to make that catch. And it's a play that they ran earlier successfully. But then, you know, the defense, you know, you got the Falcons backed up. They don't have any timeouts. You let them play 7-on-7. You know, Kirk Cousins is back there. There's no pressure. And he's just picking them apart. And so the defense, you know, to me, really let that team down as well. It was just a team loss. And I think it'll be interesting to see how they respond to this because we know they fell off the cliff the end of last season. And they bring in a new offensive coordinator. They bring in a new defensive coordinator, supposedly to kind of stir up the team and get them back on the right track. And, you know, frankly, that offense didn't look that impressive last night. Jalen Hurts, to me, kind of took a lot on his shoulders. He took a lot of punishment. But it wasn't like their offense was in sync. And so, man, there's a lot of questions to be answered in that locker room. It's going to be tough.
You brought up so many things that it's so equal to my notes. Surprises, Saints, Bucks. One thing we forgot, Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers. Disappointments, Baltimore and Cincinnati. Both those teams 0-2. You would not have seen that coming. Let's start with Harbaugh, if you don't mind, and the Chargers. We all know Jim Harbaugh can coach. And I believe he's heck of a motivator. People don't see that side of him because he doesn't want any kind of press. Probably because of past transgressions, to be honest, when it comes to playing by the rules in the NCAA. But I did not see the Chargers 2-0. Did you?
I didn't. But, you know, the thing that I've always loved about Jim Harbaugh is because he played the game, he is just incredible at going into an organization and changing the culture and being able to coach individual players and get the best out of those players. Even when they don't play well, he's able to get them back on track and just show them that he believes in them. And that type of impact from your coach can change the culture. And the Chargers, you know, they've got some talent, but the thing that you notice about this team is that they play hard for 4 quarters.
What about Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers? I mean, I really did not think when the Bucs got Mayfield that they thought he would produce like this. They were taking a chance. He'd been a failure already, and I'm impressed with the way that he and now the Bucs have bounced back. And the Bucs are amazing. They get Brady for a couple years and they win a Super Bowl. Now they get this guy and he's kept them competitive.
He has. He gets them to the playoffs last year. And this year he's just playing with a lot of confidence. He's throwing the ball extremely well, making good decisions, quick decisions. With the football, and again, his team, you know, believes in him. When you have an offense that's scoring and being effective in ball control, it gives your defense rest, and your defense plays much better. And you know, this team is going to be a force, but you know, they got to run into those Saints in that division, and I think that's going to be a challenge. That's going to be interesting to see how they play each other.
Man, yeah, I'm looking forward to all of that. And speaking of the Saints. 91 points in 2 games. Neither of their games, we're talking about all this competitiveness, neither of their games have been competitive, and they did this against the Cowboys? Whoa.
Yeah, you know, their first win was against Carolina, and everybody was saying, oh, those are the Panthers. They're not going to do anything. and you go into Dallas and play where they played. Now, they've exposed some things with the Cowboys. The Cowboys have been very ineffective in stopping the run. And then they've given up big plays in the secondary. So their defense is really struggling. And unfortunately, Dak Prescott throws 2 interceptions. He's playing with a lot of pressure. This team is a team that we really have to watch. There's a lot of pressure on their head coach, a lot of pressure on their quarterback. And they don't run the ball well. And it's going to be a challenge for them. They face a Baltimore Ravens team that's 0-2 this week at home, and
the Ravens, by the way,
fascinating.
are actually favored in this game by a point. So that's that I think is the game of the week.
Yeah, no question. That's going to be a fascinating game to watch. And then, of course, the Texans, play a really good game, a close game, but a game that they had to win and they were able to win. And this young team is playing with a lot of confidence. And again, credit to their coach, D'Amico Ryans, who's kind of changed the culture in the Texans. The Texans have been a doormat for a long time.
I love their head coach. I love their OC. And I love their quarterback.
Absolutely.
C.J. Stroud, Rookie of the Year last year, is really good. Never throws picks. So steady, so calm. Makes big plays. But their offense is so imaginative. Some of that is they got a decent offensive line. Now, the Bears did shut them down in the second half. I thought they played a pretty good game.
Yeah.
But the Bears' offensive line is so poor. And I don't think, and maybe it's the O-line that limits you, but the Bears, with their rookie quarterback, who's supposed to be so great, I give him the benefit of the doubt. He's still learning. That was his second game. But they're not nearly as creative as the Texans are on offense.
They aren't. And they've got to do a much better job of protecting their quarterback, or he's not going to make it through the season. I mean, he just took a lot of punishment in that game. And of course, that's one of the things young quarterbacks have to learn is how to get rid of the ball, get out of trouble, how to get down when there's no play to be made, how to throw the ball away when there's no play to be made. And those things, though, will take care of themselves over time. But I think the fact that their defense is as good as it is going to help them be in games while he's learning how to play on the NFL level.
C.J. Stroud was the second quarterback taken in that draft.
Mm-hmm.
The first quarterback taken was Bryce Young.
Yeah.
And Carolina's clearly the worst football team. Now, sometimes it's just fit. Here's Stroud got with a really good offensive line and an imaginative head coach and OC. Maybe that's the reason. Bryce Young now benched. They've scored 13 points, Carolina, in the first 2 games. They've given up 73. So this team is terrible on both sides of the ball. It appears that they're the worst team in the NFL. How did this thing go so backwards?
Well, I think that Carolina, unfortunately, has just not put the kind of support around Bryce Young. He's had 3 different coaches since he's been there. And for a young quarterback, you already have the learning curve just going from college to any NFL team. There's a huge learning curve. But then when you learn, then you get a new coach. He changes everything. Then you get a new – that's really tough. He's taken a lot of punishment. They haven't protected him. And that was one of my biggest concerns when he went to Carolina. Really, if whatever team he went to, because of his stature – and I think he's going to be a really good quarterback if he ends up in the right place. If he had ended up, for example, where having the kind of team around him that a Brock Purdy has, I think you would see a different result out of him. So my biggest concern for him is that mentally he's able to adjust to this kind of disappointment early in his career and a lot of criticism and what have you. The best thing may be for him to be able to get out of Carolina because they're just a dysfunctional organization as it appears. And you look at Baker Mayfield, who spent some time there. He left. He's playing great. Sam Darnold spent some time there. He left. He's playing great.
Yeah.
So to me, it's the organization. It's not Bryce Young. I just hope he ends up in an environment where he can really develop his skill set because I think he could be a really good quarterback. Very cerebral guy. And one of the reasons he was drafted as high as he was is because teams were so impressed with how he understood the game.
Last thing, kickoff rule. I haven't really seen the numbers, but I don't think there's injuries on kickoff returns. So if that was part of it, that's successful. But it was also supposed to make for more returns. That I haven't seen. I've seen a lot of fair catches in the end zone for touchbacks, and now you get the ball at the 30. And with the way these kickers are, 2 first downs, you got a field goal.
Yeah, I mean, they may end up tweaking that rule a little bit, but I love the fact that players aren't injured the way they were. It used to be really, I mean, you would see a lot of guys get just tremendous hits, receive them and deliver them on when they were running the whole field the way they were. I like the rule just for the fact that it's just safer for the players.
Well, then let's just start with the ball at the 25.
There you go.
I think the 30 is too far because, like I say, 2 first downs, boy. With all these new legs and in domes, you got 3 points.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
It's making the punter obsolete. Thank you, Jeff. As always, we truly appreciate it.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you. We're going to talk more NFL. The voice of the Tennessee Titans. They're 0-2. That was tough. And again, Will Levis just gave one away. We'll get Mike Keith's thoughts on that when we come back to Wolo and Friends.
Start your day with Sports 56 Mornings with Greg Gaston and Eli Savoy. Weekday mornings from 7 to 10, right here on Sports 56 and 98.5 FM.
Jenkins Floors and More invite you to their retail warehouse where they pass wholesale savings on to you. Jenkins Floors in Little Rock, Cleveland, Mississippi, and now open in Horn Lake at 2356 West Goodman Road. Specializing in flooring and carpeting, tile, plantation shutters, and blinds, Jenkins makes your life easy with a 2-week turnaround. Contractors, builders, or family projects, call 662-469-9350 for a free estimate. Owners Timmy and Rebecca Jenkins say hello to Sports 56 fans and look forward to your business.
A lot of ladies here in Memphis are wearing beautiful diamond rings. Have you noticed? And a lot of gentlemen are wearing nice Rolex watches now. It's all thanks to Genesis Diamonds. Hey, it's Eric Hasseltine at Genesis Diamonds has made fine jewelry more affordable than ever. This is Tennessee's direct diamond import. No middleman pricing on the finest GIA certified diamonds. All shapes, all sizes, all in prices you never thought possible. And Genesis is the only jeweler that carries the top bridal designers in America. So you can find the perfect setting to showcase that diamond and have a truly one-of-a-kind ring. And something that I love, their incredible collection of luxury premium Rolex watches. These are all in pristine condition and priced right. Thanks to Genesis, you can get that Rolex you've dreamed about. All this with no commission salespeople, no pricing games, no pressure, no nonsense. Genesis Diamonds, the official jeweler of the Tennessee Titans, and popular permits extended or online at genesisdiamonds.com.
I don't think we really need anyone else to help us tell everyone how great Central Barbecue is.
Oh, I don't think we need it either, but I just thought it might be fun to have somebody more famous than us chime in on the best barbecue in Memphis.
Well, did he talk about how Central Barbecue slow smokes its meat for 24 hours to make sure that it's perfectly tender and doesn't need a sauce?
Well, no, not exactly.
Well, did he talk about how there are Central Barbecue locations all over town?
No.
Did you write his copy for him?
I didn't want to be insulting.
So what did he say?
Hi, I'm Dave Woloshin, the voice of the Memphis Tigers. I love Central Barbecue, and I vote. Does that work okay?
What does that even mean?
I don't know.
Summer's heating up, and so are the savings at Choate's. We've got 3 incredible offers to make your season spectacular. First up, our Grill and Chill with Choate's Summer Special. Upgrade your HVAC system and choose between a free Yeti cooler or a Green Egg grill on select systems. Then power through any outage with Choate's generators. Be one of the first 50 customers to buy a generator and score a massive 75-inch TV or an iPad. Also, don't forget about our tankless water heater offer. Purchase a tankless water heater from Choate's and receive a premium toilet free. Don't wait. These offers are too good to last. Turn to the experts with Choate's and call 347-8086 or visit us online today for your free estimate. Now introducing Choate's air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and generators. Choate's, let our family serve your family.
Back to Wolo and Friends on Sports 56. Here once again is the voice of the Tigers, Dave Woloshin.
I love Tuesdays. We talk a bunch of NFL. And we end our show with the voice of the Titans, Mike Keith. And we thank you, Mike, for coming on. I look at the numbers with the Jets and the Titans, and I mean, it's such an even game with the exception of one thing. 2 turnovers, and especially a costly one on another ball security question from your young quarterback, Will Levis. Good morning. After that play, I could lip read a little bit, and Brian Callahan basically said, "What the heck are you doing?" It wasn't quite heck, but you get the drift. Good morning.
Good morning. Yes, it was not heck. It was interesting. Ron Rivera addressing this morning on Good Morning Football on NFL Network, and it was really impressive how Brian handled it yesterday, because he said in his press conference, he goes, "Look, that was my very honest reaction. Will needs to know what my reaction is, and he needs to know how I feel, but I probably need to do a better job of kind of guarding my emotions somewhat." And, so I think there was a good balance there, but I think it's also good for everybody to see how hard he's going to coach the quarterbacks here and what the level of expectation is of the quarterbacks. He came on his radio show last night and said something else interesting, too, to add to it, and that was that the ball that was thrown to Traylon Burks, which was intercepted, it was a deep ball. It was basically like a punt. It was bad timing, but it was basically like a punt. He said Traylon Burks has got to come down with that ball. He got both hands on that football. And then he said Calvin Ridley has to come up with a deep ball, that happened earlier in the third quarter. And what was interesting about that is it's the same sort of standard with less emotion than he was holding Will Levis to on the other play. And I pressed him. I said, okay, do you really believe if you're coaching them this hard and having that level of expectation that in short order things can change and suddenly you'll start making the proper plays? And he said, absolutely. He said, that's what I've seen throughout my career. And so, that to me was kind of typical of where I think Brian Callahan is on all of this right now. Is we're still in the process of learning who he is, how he's going to coach, what the level of expectation is, and we're going to have to learn how to make the plays to win. Right now, we're not making enough of those plays, Dave.
If you look at the Levis numbers, I mean, and we take the one interception away because maybe that's not on him, right? Or it's like a bunt. It's not going to kill you. He outthrew, at least distance-wise, yardage-wise, Aaron Rodgers, 192 yards. He did get a touchdown in there. It's the other play where you're not taking care of the football 2 weeks in a row. You just think you can do too much. And there's a learning curve for a guy. It's not like he's an 8-year veteran or, in Rodgers' case, forever. But how much grace do you give him? How many more mistakes before you just go, come on, you're not getting it?
Well, I think that's up to the head coach.
Right.
But, I mean, it's a fair question in that Will played well overall. That's what gets lost because you know what the headline's going to be coming out of the game. He did it again. Right. And it is. And that's what everybody's still talking about 48 hours later is he did it again. And, oh, by the way, the Titans had a punt blocked again. And so those are the two headlines. But when you go back and you watch the game, I'm not even saying watch the tape. I'm just saying watch the game. You say the quarterback played a good game.
Yeah.
He threw well. Here's what I was really struck by. So Calvin Ridley was guarded all over the field for a good portion of the game by Sauce Gardner, who is arguably the best corner in the NFL. Will Levis gave Calvin Ridley a chance to make plays, and he did against Sauce Gardner, which a lot of young quarterbacks would not do, Dave, because they would be scared to death to throw at Sauce Gardner. They would be terrified. And this guy's not scared. Or as we like to say, he ain't scared. I think in great quarterbacks, that's a good thing. But what does it also lead to? It also leads to plays where you try to throw the ball backwards, and it causes a fumble. So the fearlessness leads to recklessness. And that part of it, how do you get the recklessness out while keeping the fearlessness? You don't want to turn your quarterback into Charlie Checkdown.
Right.
You don't want him to be afraid all the time to make a mistake. So how do you do that? I think that's the process of where we are right now, and we're sort of probably going to have to undergo some painful lessons for a while, hopefully less painful than the two needless mistakes that he made in the first two games of the year.
I really like that fearless, reckless. I can relate it to, I like to, sort of analyze these things and bring in other sports. And I don't know if you ever snow skied, but in order to really become a proficient snow skier, you have to have a certain amount of speed to really learn how to weight and unweight and use your edges, okay? There's a fine line between too fast and not too fast, in control and out of control, and you kind of got to get to the point where you're on that line to really become a good skier. And he's kind of on that line right now.
He's totally on that line. And I think for where you are in really anything. I mean, think about a comedian like Andy Kaufman.
Mm-hmm.
Think about different rock singers. Think about painters. Think about people who work in your office. People who are willing to, unafraid to take big chances and who are not scared, oftentimes do things that end up being reckless. The two genes, or the gene comes out of the same thing, really,
Yeah.
And that's where we've got to get him. Some guys can't ever get out of it. Some guys can't ever get out of it, and you lose the trust. Brett Favre had a lot of that.
Oh, no doubt.
But Brett Favre, as he went further in his career, and remember all the fights he had with Mike Holmgren over, stop doing that. Those are the sorts of things that you get out of, or you start doing less of, or as my dad used to say, stop trying to beat Pete Maravich. Because Pete Maravich was the guy who he could throw a bounce pass, and instead he would try to throw a behind the back pass. And there's a brilliance to those people, but there's also at times a big frustration. And I don't know where Will Levis ends up in this, but I think, he's got to get to that point under this coach quickly where he's not making those mistakes. And it's Brian's challenge to get him to do it without sort of defanging him in the process.
2 weeks in, what do you think of Tony Pollard?
Oh, I love Tony Pollard. He had 100 yards from scrimmage. I mean, Tajay Spears got a little dinged up with an ankle, and he had to play more. And he did an outstanding job. I mean, he's a winning player. And if we play more like Tony Pollard, top to bottom, this week, we'll beat Green Bay. We'll win a lot of games. Tony Pollard is a winning NFL player. And we've got several of those guys that we brought in via free agency. We're still trying to kind of craft it all together, but I don't see anything that Tony doesn't do well. He runs inside, he runs outside, he blocks, he catches. I mean, he made a catch on a wheel route on a huge play, huge third down, where, Dave, he knew he was going to get it. He knew he was going to get smacked. And he did. Guy hit him in the head. It was a 15-yard penalty, and he still caught the ball.
Oh, yeah. And I've seen him take on linebackers and defensive linemen as a pass blocker fearlessly.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, he learned the whole game at Melrose and at Memphis. And, I mean, you know this stat, but a lot of Titans fans didn't. He had more catches than carries at Memphis. And so his acumen in the pass game, whether it be catching the ball or picking up protection or whatever, is such a big thing. And the protection part of it is not just the physicality. It's like Derrick Henry had never been asked to do that. Well, Derrick Henry's certainly not afraid of contact, but there's a feel for how it's done, who you pick up, who you get. Derrick Henry never had that because he's never been asked to do it. because Tony has been asked to do it from the start of his career. He has a tremendous knowledge of it. And his overall savvy is a huge lift to this football team.
What did you think of Aaron Rodgers for, his second game after a year off and really still learning his teammates?
Looked like a guy that really knows how to play quarterback in the NFL. I don't think he's going to win MVP. He doesn't move like he once did, but he knew what the game was, and he didn't beat him. He made plays to help them win. And as their defense comes together through the course of the season, and they did, lose one of their better players to injury, so you're hoping for their sake they can do it. But I mean, you're talking about a guy who, at this point, is just sort of the crafty veteran. I won't say he's a knuckleballer because he's still got a little more than that.
Still got a
not
bit of a fastball.
Knuckleballers. Yeah, the fastball is not 98 miles an hour anymore, but he's still got a little movement on it,
Yeah.
And that's what he did. When they saw he was getting a lot of pressure early in the game, they went 5 wide, spread him out, and he got the ball out fast, and he didn't take many hits, and I doubt he had to go in the cold tub on Monday.
Last thing, in about 45 seconds. The new kickoff rule, safer, not much more exciting than I've seen so far. Your thoughts?
Safer for sure. But now the kickoff returns went down in week 2. I think teams are going to start kicking it in the end zone. I believe that's what's going to happen for the majority of this year. If they bring it back next year, to make more returns happen, they'll have to bring the touchback out to the 35 to make teams kick it into play.
Well, at the 30, 2 first downs with kickers the way they are now and all those 50-plus, 2 first downs, you get a field goal. We're making the punter obsolete in the National Football League. Mike, as always, we truly appreciate it. Good luck at home with the Green Bay Packers this week. You know where I stand. You can beat the heck out of the Packers.
Of course.
And I look forward to chatting with you next Tuesday.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. That's Mike Keith, voice of the Tennessee Titans. He's brought to you in part by Memphis Public Links. You want to see great golf courses? You go to Audubon, brand new. You go to Pine Hill, totally redone just 2-3 years ago with a new clubhouse that opened this spring. You'll love it. Go to Overton Park where they just did that incredible design. You want to really practice your game? You know that the new Audubon's got a 6-hole golf course. The longest hole is 70 yards. It's all about kids learning the game. Go to Fox Meadows. You'll love that. And, of course, the Cadillac, the old staple, which was, I guess, redone about 15 years ago, Galloway, that everybody absolutely loves to play. But you better go to MemphisPublicLinks.com right away to get a tee time there because it fills up fast. And fall, especially this week with the way the weather's going to be, it's the perfect time to play golf. I've got many perfect places for you to play. It's called Memphis Public Links. That'll do it for us. We'll see you tomorrow. A big show planned. Baseball, Munzie, and some other surprises as well. See you tomorrow. Johnny Radio's next. Have a great day, everyone.